host, Shaka.
And I'm Kiana.
And we just want to thank you for tuning in to another episode of your favorite podcast, Lyman and Healing. We want to thank everyone that's been supporting us on our journey. Thank you to everyone who subscribed, liked, followed, commented, sent questions, give answers, talk about their own experiences. We really do appreciate that. Everything helps us, guys. And ensure that you hit that like button right now so we can get it out. And if you haven't subscribed us yet, ensure you do, because remember, it's free. Because I want you guys to sit back and enjoy this episode. It's going to be good. So you're going to want to send it out to everybody so you can hit forward one time. Because it's going to
Yes.
be a really good topic today. What are we talking about today, Kiana?
Yes. So today we're talking about dating, but not just dating, dating within the church. As two Christian girlies, we love God and we
We
want
do.
to, also talk about um Christianity and how it approaches dating and all that stuff. So we're talking about that from a Christian perspective, right? So for all of the single people out there like me, have you ever felt like the church taught you to wait for God for a partner, but never showed you what to do in the meantime? Have you? And I'm sure a lot of people could relate to that. So, in this week's episode, we're going to unpack that, right? We're going to unpack how church culture has shaped, limited, and in some case, failed us when it comes to dating within the church and finding like your partner. And it's going to be an interesting one. So, for some people, religion might not be your thing, and we're not even coming from a religious point of view, but the
No.
genuine point of view as Christians, and talking about how the church navigates dating. Because let's be real, people, you know there's so many single people in the church, and you're like, but why is that the case? Like, if so many of us are single, why are we not meeting each other? Why are we not connecting? Something is going on,
Right.
right? So let's talk about it, right? So we're going to start with the good. So what's good about the way the church approaches dating? So for
Mm.
me, two good things I would say is, it focuses on the spiritual compatibility, which is very important. You need to be equally yoked. And we talk about that
Yeah.
in the past. I think in an episode we talked about, is love enough, right? And we talk about
Yeah.
compatibility. And
Mm-hmm.
compatibility is so important. Unless two agree, how can they walk? How can they walk? How can we navigate life if we don't
True.
agree?
Right.
so
That's
it's
true.
so it's so important for us to have an agreement, and the spiritual compatibility is the foundation of said agreement. So it all starts there. And the churches, they would emphasize, most of the churches, a good church, I would say, would emphasize. Let's be
Good
for
church.
real. Let's be clear. It would emphasize the importance of being spiritually compatible, like that's
Yeah.
so important. And
Mm-hmm.
then also, it would talk about the physical boundaries, like, for example, no sex before marriage. And I think that's a good thing as well. That way, you both men and women preserve themselves for each other. And that is a topic in and of itself
It's
for
yeah.
another day where we can talk about that some more. We're not going to go into that
Mm-hmm.
too much today, but we can in a future episode talk about that, because that alone, is a lot. And in today's society, especially in the church, church culture in the world, like sometimes you won't even know which one is which, because people be in the church, and that doesn't really apply. But we're not gonna get too deep into that, but we're gonna talk about it. So yeah, so those are my two things I would say are good things the church does when it comes
Yeah.
to dating. What do you have, Shaka? Do you have any other suggestions?
Well, I like how you started with the good things, because there are to me a lot of not so good things, with dating in the church. Because like, what does that even really look like? You mentioned
Mm-hmm.
spiritual compatibility, and I think that's really good
Mm-hmm.
because you gotta be equally yoked. What does that even mean though? Like, I feel like I no,
We're on the
like for
same page.
real.
We're on the same page. Whatever that page is, we're on the same page.
No, but I mean, as in, like, it's like both y'all in the church, like, is that what I mean? Or both y'all from like the same denomination? But
Mm,
like, what really is spiritual compatibility? And I feel like, even though it's a good thing, and it helps because, both of y'all have the same beliefs per se,
mm-hmm.
right? But, is that always a good? But I move on. And then you talk about physical boundaries, no sex. I have my own views on that. But as you mentioned, we're not going to talk about that. But I don't always agree with that, but okay, we're gonna move on from that because it's a whole topic
For
in
now,
itself.
we'll bring that back in a later episode. Let us know if you want
But
us to talk about it.
yeah, let us know. But what honestly, I like the pros of it was so like, I was thinking about when you mentioned I was thinking about it because like to me, like dating in the church, like it seems so boring. Like like first when I was like younger. No, for real.
No,
It seems like such a
I agree.
it seems like such a boring thing, to be honest, because like, especially when you're not like deep in the church. Yes, I grew up in the church per se. My
Mm-hmm.
church walk is, I'll say it's like this, right? Church walk, spiritual walk different, God walk different, church walk like this. Um, but to me, I honestly thought it was it like seemed so boring because it's just like this one thing all the time. So I wasn't like super fan of church dating. But as I got older, I think that the things that I think that I thought was good is they have like clear intention and purpose. Nobody
Mm-hmm.
out here wasting your time. You understand? If both of y'all dating in the church, you know that supposedly, you're not supposed to be wasting your time. Okay, let me say that right. But you're supposed to get married at the end of it, right?
Yes,
If you're dating a church, brother, he ain't supposed to be wasting your time. Let me say that. He ain't supposed to be wasting your time. You know
facts.
that is married, kids, there's it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So clear intentions from the start. When you're not in the church specifically, that don't mean that you're gonna get there to marriage. Some people didn't even want married, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there's pretty good. And another thing too is some churches offer like counseling. Like, before you get married, you have to do like church counseling, you gotta do like
Mm-hmm.
marriage classes, and sometimes they're the only one in society that would actually do it or where you would actually get any kind of counseling, period, right? Especially in the
Mm-hmm.
Caribbean society, usually they get like a marriage therapist or stuff like that. The church would be the place that most communities would go to.
Mm-hmm.
So I think like that was always a good thing for me. As I got older, I was like, you know what, this is actually a good thing because a lot of times where else could you even find that?
Mm-hmm.
But with that being said, there's a lot of areas whereby, church dating falls short to me, right? Like church being the only dating pool, right? Like there's the
Mm-hmm.
only place that you can go. I remember a time I was in my church. My church is a very strict church, the one that I grew up in. I wouldn't say like super strict, like you gotta wear like, some churches you could only wear dresses or whatever. No,
Mm.
they're not that strict, but they're pretty strict. And I remember the pastor come to me saying, "Oh, Shaka, heard you dating someone from another denomination, and that's not good." I was like, the person I was dating, they going more church than me. I ain't gonna lie, but you come to me because I'm not even supposed to date outside of the denomination,
That's
and
crazy.
right? And one thing I had to say with dating, period. I say this with I give this advice anytime with dating. I was like, don't ever confine yourself with dating. Don't
Mm-hmm.
if like if people like, oh, I will only date Guyanese girl, I would date Jamaican girls, I would only like to me, you're confining yourself. Like even
Mm-hmm.
though the world is a big place, go and find somebody that suits you outside of
Mm-hmm.
don't make the levels like smaller. Don't make the circles smaller. So if in certain churches you're not allowed, if it's a Baptist, you can't date a Pentecost, well, Pentecostal, but yeah,
Assemblies
or you
of
can't
God.
Assemblies God, or after
Mm.
7 days, you can't even come out of that period, right? So for me, I feel like this you limit yourself in terms of
Mm-hmm.
the dating pool or whatever. And once again, dating within the church, it, religion is a different religious and a different of godly and spiritual because somebody might not be going to church as
Mm-hmm.
regular, but they get a good heart, and also another thing that I don't think with the church, especially like with women, like people is be judged of being like proactively dating. Like if they say like, they want to get to go on a dating app or something like that, then be like, oh, why you be, like, why you being desperate in that
Mm-hmm.
way or whatever. So I don't think that, there's something that is good
Mm-hmm.
because they like frowned upon it if you're actively trying to do the
Mm-hmm.
things or
Mm-hmm.
even stepping out of doing the things that is expected from the
Mm-hmm.
church. Hmm.
That is so
What else you
true.
think?
That is so true. And you're talking about, like the church talk about waiting, and that is so true because they a lot of time the church misuse waiting on the Lord. They expect, like, I made a video recently where I'm like, pretending I was at home and a guy was at my door, like, oh, this is when
Yeah,
my
it's
husband
true.
is gonna find me. And that's how the church expect, like,
That's
yes,
true.
he who finds a wife find a good thing. Yes, but women in particular, like, there are things you need to do. You need to be proactive in actively,
Yeah,
seeking a suitor. You may not need to be go looking, but you need to make yourself available, right? So the church makes you passively wait a lot of time because you're not supposed to, one, maybe not go on dating apps, maybe not even go on dates. How are you gonna meet your husband if you don't go on dates? You need to meet people, you
facts.
need to go out with people. And I had that mentality, especially in my early 20s. I grew, like Shaka said, growing
Okay.
up in the church. You were taught that, oh, you're gonna find your husband, but not dating is definitely not helping you. Yes, you need
Yes.
to date with sense, have wisdom with how you navigate that, but you still need to make yourself available. A lot of times, women, you need to make yourself available, not available, but like preparation physically. Like, you need to be wearing cute stuff, doing your hair, doing your nails. Like, all those things are important. You don't do those things when you get married. You do those things now,
Yeah, it's
because
true.
in the world, they're like, oh, you got to do this to catch a man or whatever. In a way, it's true. In the church as
Yeah.
well. You got to look good. You have to look good. Like, people have eyes visually, you're not supposed to lust, but you still have eyes to see.
That's true.
And
That's true.
a lot of times the church does not talk about stuff like that. Like, they just expect
Ooh.
things to happen. And then, you wait, this man show up. Yum. And some people it might work that way, but for the most people, it sets them
Yeah.
up for an unrealistic expectations, right? And what happens is, you're inactive, you don't make any moves, you do nothing, and that makes you feel romantically stagnant, right? Because you're just waiting, 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 when you could have been doing something else. You could have been, meeting people through a club, not
Yeah.
like a partying club. I mean,
A
nothing wrong with
club.
that either, but like sport, like different activities, like people join different kind of clubs, like Rotaract in Guyana. I mean, it's around the world. There is sports clubs, like for different
Yeah.
activities and just different interests. Like, what are things that you enjoy doing? You can meet people in those kind of ways. Online dating, because we're in a technological world, that's
Yeah.
also a way
Exactly.
to, like what Shaka said, widen your pool, get to meet people that are beyond who you would meet,
Yeah.
just in your church or within your community. And
Mm-hmm.
the church having you wait like that a lot of times just makes you do nothing. And that's not the
Yeah.
answer either.
Yeah, that's true. And you mentioned you got to look cute or whatever. And a lot of times to me, once again, I've been in church and I would pay
Mhm.
attention and stuff like that. But it's like they get some girls be like, she's dressed oldie, or dressed to church. And it be the people in the church saying them things. That I'm like, yeah. And it be like the eldest women in the church, like the older women. And let me tell you, 100% of the time, them older women don't live their life. You
Mhm.
understand? Don't live their life. Find their husband. And now in the church,
Mhm.
I know you listening to them or them and even like offering like proper guidance, but it's a whole different thing. But my point is, you're right. You got to at least. I'm not saying dress outside of what you're comfortable with,
Right.
right? But
You
you're
could be
seeking.
modest and cute.
Yes, you could be modest. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Exactly. So yeah, I
Yeah.
definitely agree with that. So, yeah, the unrealistic expectations. Mm-mm.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's just like a bunch of unrealistic expectation, like I mentioned, you know. So what are like some other, you know, what is the church roadmap even for dating? Like, what is the plan? Like, what do they tell the people?
Yeah, that's true. Honestly, I don't even think they do have a roadmap. Like people in the church, I mean, I'm gonna be in the church more than me, right? But tell me or let us know in the comments like what your church would advise, right? I could only talk about based on what I know from my church that I, used to go to, and I would say it's more religious than anything else. But like I know some churches you have to be baptized first, like even before you're considered,
Mm-hmm,
right? Like you
mm-hmm.
can't be dating somebody in the church or thinking about getting married if you ain't even like a baptized member, right? And I feel like,
Wow.
yeah, I feel like this too. I mean, the goal of the church is to have people to commit to God, and we know this, right? But I feel like some people
Or
might even
membership. That's what it is.
or membership. That is true too. That's true too. But I feel like, if you're not even baptized, you're not even considered as like to even be dating or paying attention or like anybody like even trying to like help you along this journey because you're not even considered like a real member. So people put a lot of pressure on that, and I think that's good. Or two, being active in the church. Like, like if somebody trying to date somebody in the church or whatever, and they don't
Mm-hmm.
teach Bible study or whatever, or don't even come to Bible study, they you're not even considered. They be like, oh, but she don't even come to Bible study. She don't even like, you don't know people going everywhere out of work, and these different things. So I feel like it's more like a status thing, as in like, oh, you gotta be this way to even be considered. Or you gotta be pure. You understand? You can't be like from the streets and then come in and then had a time. The pastor's son trying to marry the girl. No, that's not gonna happen. Be like, no, she was in the streets or whatever. So like all these different things, I feel you got to portray that you are pure in some way, shape, or form. You
Mm-hmm.
understand? So I feel like those are the things that I would think they look at, as in like
Yeah.
what you need to do to even, and that's not even like a roadmap in itself. What else you think that
Mm-hmm.
they would like look
Yeah.
at?
And that's so good because for me, my experience with the church, because I moved away when I was 17. So, um, yeah, which was like a crucial point in time, like,
That's true
to
for dating too.
experience. Yeah. Because, like, in
Hmm.
America, I'm trying to remember, like, how that goes. And you're not wrong. Like, a lot of what you're saying even applies to churches in America as
Okay.
well. And, a lot of times, they engage in courtship. Like I remember reading this book, Single Dating Marriage, right?
Okay.
And basically it says that, in the Bible, there's no such thing as a boyfriend or a girlfriend. Either you're single or you're married, right? So the church takes that very seriously in the sense that when you're courting, like, courtship, like, there's no casual dating. So they're like, okay, it's serious. So let's say you're talking, it's either you're talking for a marriage or there's nothing casual about this. So they
That's
put
true.
the pressure on you with that. Like, so like if you're like saying that this is this person, they're watching to make sure, like, okay, if that's the person, we're watching you, make sure y'all have an accountability partner to make sure y'all doing the right thing and all that stuff.
Chaperones?
Chaperones. Yeah. And, some churches you might need to even seek leadership approval. Low key, I feel like that's a cult, but that's not here or there. Because I'm like, why do I need your approval? Okay.
You got to
But
go to pastor.
I digress with that. That's too much interference, in my opinion. But
Hmm.
so yeah, so some churches do have that, like, you need to have approval. And to me, that gets a little bit weird to me, right?
Okay.
But some churches do that. Um, and then some churches, especially in the Caribbean, I'm sure it happens in America too, because we love a good cult
Yeah.
documentary. It forces you to get married like on crusades. Like growing up, I remember there's like a lot of different type of churches would have like these crusades whereby they would like doing like marriages, like mass marrying people, like
Yeah.
people of the same group. You don't even know that person. And then they're like, oh, you're the same age, whatever, whatever. We'll marry you, which is crazy. That happened. And I don't know. That to me is also weird. And one of the pastors that we listen to and we like, recently we were talking about this while we were, thinking of this episode. They he had like a sermon where is talking about different things about distractions to different type of sins, and one of them being like if you're living in sin, like if you're living home, for some people living home is a must, like that's a part of the relationship cycle, but in the
Yeah,
church that is a sin, right?
it's a sin. Yeah,
And he was saying that he talked about it to people, like God told him, if you're in church, like you should rectify this. And the way they went about it, I think it was fair and right.
yeah,
Like, yes, they talked about that it was a sin, but what they did was also counsel the people living together, like, hey, this is what you're getting into. Are you in agreement? Are you ready to move to this next step? To
yeah.
have
That's good.
both parties willing and able to say yes, we're ready, instead of just being, because I know, once again, we're talking about crusades, like they talk about a sin, and a lot of times people are moved because of the emotions, and their fear and the fear of God. And I'm not saying anything is wrong with that, but a lot of times
Yeah,
people do stuff in the moment without a lot of preparation, a lot of guidance, a lot of information. And then
yeah,
on the other side of things, they get married in the heat of the moment. And then on the other side of things, now we got to get annulment or a divorce and all those stuff.
yeah,
And that's not God's desire either, for people to be divorced. So I feel like the church definitely, yes, you highlight what's sin for people, but a lot of times
yeah,
you can't pressure people in the same breath. Like, it has to be them, they have to come to that
yeah,
decision themselves. So for me, a lot of times the church roadmap, feels forceful, right?
yeah.
It's too forceful, and that can be a problem, And then
Hmm.
let's talk about the lack of inclusivity, because you're talking about the girl on the street who was a street girl now turned church girl. There's not much
Yeah,
space for her, because let's say she even came with some kids pre
yeah,
outside of wed marriage. She made some babies outside, and now she
yeah,
becomes a Christian, and there's a brother in the church wanting to be with her. A lot of times, she does not fit the mold of who they want her to be. Teen moms, divorced
yeah.
individuals as well. All those things can be ridiculed in the church because you're like, you're damaged goods, and it's sad to say, but a lot of
It's
times you're
true.
viewed as that.
Yeah, it's true. That is so true. And indeed, that is sad,
Mm-hmm.
But you mentioned with that too, like with the church and the tent. Oh, sorry, to go marry on the tent. I'm sorry. That's what they say in Guyana, right? Like, I mean, the possibly like yeah, should get married or whatever, but check in with God. Like, I feel like this thing to me, like it's missing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I ain't here, oh, like, you know what, check in with God. If God tell the pastor, you could tell me, right? Like, is that man right for you? Why you don't check? Pray for
Mm-hmm.
wisdom. I'm not trying to, preach a message here, but I feel like
Yeah.
this one of the things that's missing with the church is more religiosity
Mm-hmm.
than spiritual guidance,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's something that I definitely don't
Agree
agree
with.
with at all.
Mm-hmm.
Like yeah, because you're being forced to do something, but no, there's a God decision. That's something that you and God need to discuss.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's a huge, huge, huge thing. So yeah.
Yeah, just
And I'm not saying that, they're wrong for calling out sin. They're not, but
no, exactly.
they're not supposed to force people either to do something. 'Cause a lot of times people are just filled on a high, in those moments, the whole thing happening, and then they make decisions on a high that they probably wouldn't make on a low. And that's something you need to be mindful of. And just the
Yeah,
way in which church a lot of times have like this one size fits all advice to everyone, it does not really apply, because the advice is often like generic. It's usually, it assumes like a very traditional path, whereas courtship, engagement, marriage,
yeah,
and for the most part, yes, that can be the path, but it may look different for different people for various
Yes.
reasons and stuff like that. And this is why when we talked about having the leader's approval, where I'm like, I feel like on an individual level, the approval you need is from God. It's not from man,
Yes.
not from your pastor. It got to be from you. So, ladies, if that man is telling you, I dreamt you're my wife, and God didn't confirm that to you in a dream either, like, interesting. And vice versa, man. Don't let women tell you the same and then you did not get that confirmation. Pray for that confirmation for yourself as well. Like, don't take
Exactly.
people's word as the full gospel. Like you
Yeah.
can't. So what are some other things that the church does, on the roadmap that doesn't necessarily work?
Well, yeah, as I said, it's not even really a roadmap, and
Mm-hmm.
just like what you mentioned, like over spiritualizing the connection, like that you mentioned, God told me you're my spouse, like I dreamt this. Like, I had it in a dream, right? I had it in a dream that
Okay,
God said you're gonna
MLK
be my
Jr.
wife. You're gonna be my wife, you're gonna be my husband, like they over spiritualize that connection. And I remember listening to this pastor, Stephanie of she name
um,
fancy. I ain't even gonna try it. But Stephanie, that's the pastor Stephanie. And she was talking about, she used to pray a lot and ask for a spouse. And then she's had
mhm,
a lot of men. She's been like, she's really big on, she's like a real big pastor, real respected, really good. And she would get people coming to her and be like, oh, I dreamt that God, God said,
mhm.
you or whatever. And she would be like, but I just talk to God as well. He could check in with me
That
too. You
part.
understand? And what she said too, and I remember sharing this with you guys too, sharing it with you. And she was saying that, she wanted to get married so much, she was making marriage an idol in her life. And a lot of times we do that, especially when you're in the church, because if there's a woman in the church and you're married, it's like, oh gosh, like who is you? What is you? Like you
Mhm.
ain't married, like it's a
Mhm.
outcast.
Yeah, your life,
Basically,
your life only begins when you're married.
exactly, exactly.
Mhm.
A lot of people be like, well, I can't wait till I marry this, and I can't wait for marry this, and I can't wait for me, my husband do this. And she said that as a pastor, she said, you know what, I was making marriage an idol, and
Mhm.
that was
Mhm.
wrong. You understand? And me, I'm not saying, and I feel like this is the thing too, as in like another thing with that is that you get pressure to marry young, like
Mhm.
because it's basically all you fit for. You're a woman in the church, even if you want to do your studies, do this, whatever, become this thing or whatever. This all you fit for. Marry young, and men too. I'm not saying just women, but men too,
Mhm.
right? Like like, but you have no opportunity to like date and all these different things to meet people, understand who they are, and do other things. So like marrying young, person marry young, or person to marry soon as you sin. Right? Soon as you sin, you gotta go and marry this man. Like, how is that? Anyway, like once again, this is another
Another
topic.
day. That's
Another
a
day.
topic for another day.
Yeah, because yeah, we can't talk about that. But like that is crazy to me. There, marriage. If you want a successful marriage, it's it's a lot before as it is after. And I feel like we are placing the emphasis on before. Before is like you this, there is it, right? As Kiana mentioned, it's just one thing. Courtship. And your courtship ain't even lasting long. If your courtship for a year, it'd be like, you married yet? Like it's crazy. And also, most importantly, like lack of mentorship and role modeling in the church. Like some church, the pastor and not cheating on his wife, but we be honest, right? You can be up there saying, marriage is sacred, whatever, whatever, and you not keeping your
Mhm.
marriage sacred. Like, I'm not saying like this all churches or whatever, but people in the church, you kind of be like, oh, looking at your pastor for advice, and he cannot give you the advice. Like
Mhm.
he cannot give you advice of something that he himself cannot uphold. You understand? So I feel like lack of mentorship and role models in the church is something too. Because and not only that, times are different, right?
Mhm.
Times are different. So we got to look at ways to make things, adapt to us now. Back then, they used to get arranged marriages. They used to,
Bring it
various
back.
things.
Bring it back.
You think you should bring back? We got to do a topic on that. Should we bring back arranged marriages? So because if I arrange a marriage for you, you think you're gonna want the marriage? Because I can choose what I think is best for you, not what you want. So when you talk about
Hmm.
bring it back, you want it. And again, a lot of people who probably watch this episode, because some cultures, they still do have arranged marriage,
Hmm.
and they definitely want it. Definitely wanted. But there's a lot of things that the church could do now, I feel, to,
Hmm.
to make things better. Because if you're gonna be in the church and be like, as Kiana mentioned, wait on the Lord, waiting all the time. You gotta be doing, don't look at me like, and I feel like this is the way the breakdown comes. Like you be like, I'm a Christian, I'm a sister in the church, and so I'm gonna wait on the Lord for him to do the right thing. But that can't be
Hmm.
it. That's it. What else are you doing? What else is happening? What else is, gonna
Hmm.
happen? So, like, what do you think that we could do now in the church
Hmm.
to be better with this or help people with this? There's an epidemic of loneliness
Yeah, there
in the
is.
world. It's an epidemic of
Hmm.
loneliness in the world. A lot of
And in the
people not
church.
together. Exactly, and in the church. So, what some of the things that you think the church could do to be better at this?
Yeah, absolutely. So right off the bat, create space for real conversation about love, about sex and commitment.
Yeah,
I feel like pastor needs to give people back their autonomy. God gave each and every one of us free will, you
mm-hmm.
know. So that means you got to make the decision to choose. You can't just wait without being intentional, without being proactive, because you're waiting for somebody else to make the choice for you. And if it's the church in that instance, then that is not the way. So the church needs to give back people their autonomy and their free will to
Yes,
make
that's a
those
good point.
decisions. And what they can do is do it in a way to make sure that they prioritize doing so in a holy way, so they don't have to
Yeah,
be in the world doing it. So a lot of
yeah,
times,
exactly.
people have to go out to the world who wants to do it in that way.
That's
And a lot
true.
of times you don't have that safeguards, those parameters, those accountability to keep you from sinning. So if the church can do stuff like creating single mixers whereby single
Yeah,
people can go to events to meet each other. I remember growing up, you used to
that's
have
a
like
good
youth
one.
ministry, and that usually was like from 18 to 30, I think, or 16 to 30, which is kind of weird age gap. But anyways,
Yeah,
maybe
the
18
church
to
weird
30.
gap
Yeah.
is weird. My church weird um gap was weird because you used to be like you used to have stuff for when you're
Hmm.
young, like just for kids, and then you get
Hmm.
like teens and then old women. Like they had nothing for like
Yeah,
to be like you like if you reach 25 or 30, you ain't get nothing. It's either
exactly.
you with the youth or you're with
Married.
older women.
Hmm.
Yeah, or
And if
married
you're not
women.
married and you're that age,
Exactly.
you're out of luck. Yeah.
Exactly.
So like having like speed dating, like faith-based
Yeah,
speed
that's a
dating.
good
I
one.
know there's like there is Christian dating apps, but
Right? Christian Mingle. Oh, we are giving them that.
honestly,
Yeah.
low key, I've met some people on those things, but take those things with a grain of salt.
That's why I gotta ask for wisdom.
Yes, wisdom.
Not
You
because
have
Christian on it.
to exactly. Even though you're going to these things in the church, practice wisdom, because not everybody there crying. I'm a Christian, have pure intentions in their hearts. So you got to
Exactly.
be mindful. Having relationship workshops. I love that.
Yes.
Like the guy who did the five love languages, he's actually a Christian. So I believe,
Yeah, he is.
they do that in churches. They have like the love language quiz and all that stuff, which I think is fantastic because people need to
Mm-hmm.
know what your love languages are.
Mm-hmm. Check
Doing
out our
like
episode
community,
on love languages.
yeah, community, having like community service meetups, like stuff like that. Again, given to the community. A lot of times, young people have the time, especially when you're single. That's when you have
Yeah.
the most time in the world. Not a lot of time,
Mm-hmm.
but you still got time compared to somebody who's married and have kids and all that stuff. So have the single people come out and help serve the community and, doing the church outings or retreats. Like do those things older. Have older
Yeah.
people who are in their 30s and above, late 20s, I would say, to and above, have them still go on retreats and give them the
Yeah.
space to meet people, because a lot of times
Yeah.
those opportunities are only there for when you're younger, and then
Mm-hmm.
if you're not married in that short period of time and you're left in the, you're older, you just don't have the potential to meet more people, because a lot of times,
Yeah.
unless you're meeting them at your work, and if you work remotely like me, then that's another situation. So what do you think are can the church do that it currently doesn't do? What else can they do?
Okay. What else? Okay. So well, you mentioned a good point first, like with the like having the meetups and stuff like that, right? Because I'm thinking back to my church too, like all the women would only have like women's ministry,
Mhm.
and they will go on women's event. So if you're
Mhm.
older, they will only have like women events. They don't have a lot of like, both sexes like meeting together to do events. Like,
Mhm.
like you say somebody as we mentioned, like, people divorce and stuff like that. Like what are they supposed to do? Like they're not even like we consider to be like remarried or stuff like that. Like where are they finding like somebody too?
Mhm.
Like it's even older women too, like if they're divorced or widowed or whatever, that's like it for them. The churches don't even have like older activities
Mhm.
for that age for them to meet someone new. So I
Yeah.
think the church needs to definitely change the vision on what dating looks like in terms of age and all these different things. So what else I
Mhm.
think they should do is also normalize dating. Like I feel like dating is such a taboo thing because for the moment you think dating, you think people sinning.
Yeah.
Like, oh, dating, oh, the two of them there, oh, she go by she house, she go by he house.
Mhm.
Immediately you think it's some kind of sin kind of activity happening
Mhm.
instead of somebody getting to know each other. Or
Mhm.
she did he and she did he and then she did he. Something is
Mhm.
wrong with that.
Mhm.
No, like normalize dating as an active process. Like you have to know. I say like this. I say this all the time. How you gonna know what you like?
Mhm.
There's me, and I know a lot of people might disagree with me, but I'm a firm believer in that. You understand? Meet somebody. You might think some people be like, "Oh, I want a doctor." Let me just say that. Let's be like a normal, ambitious one. Oh, I want to
Mhm.
marry a doctor. Then realize the doctor I was working. You're like, you know
Exactly.
what, me
Don't
wonder.
have the
But how
time.
you would you know? But how would you know unless you experience certain things? Like,
Mhm.
like it ain't got to be sin as I mentioned,
Yeah.
right? But you can date wrong. And I feel like people make an issue as in
Mhm.
like dating as a problem. Like
Yeah.
even though when you talk about
Because dating is basically collecting information. It's getting to know
yeah,
somebody. It don't mean you're sleeping with everybody you're dating. No, that's not what that means at all. And that's what I feel like the church think it means.
yeah. But not only that, you're talking about dating, you get to know somebody, dating get to know yourself. A lot of times you
Mhm.
don't know what you're gonna be as a wife, as a partner, or whatever. A lot of things that I took into my marriage now, I've learned from dating before, and I'm glad for that, good and the bad, right?
Mhm.
Good and the bad, because now I know like certain things are okay, and there's certain things that I like, and certain things I don't like, and certain things are
Mhm.
unacceptable. But I would not have known about myself if I had not dated. You
Mhm.
understand? So I feel like that is super, super important that we really need to try to make that normal, try to make that okay, not, make it like so taboo or something is wrong with it. Right.
Mhm.
And also like have leadership, like encourage people not to judge people. Like they can be the one telling people to date and stuff like that. Once again, the pastor that we listen to, he does encourage people to like date and stuff like that. Like change the perspective. It can't just be the same thing over time. Like see what is working. As I mentioned, there's an epidemic of loneliness. Clearly,
Mhm.
whatever you're doing is not working. If you waiting on the bench, I'm gonna call it bench, and I don't like the term, right? But you waiting for this man,
Put me in,
10 years,
coach.
15 years. You trying to tell me what you're doing is not working. What you're doing is not working. You understand? You
Mhm.
be like, oh God, then no. You old, you won't have kids. I said the part. I ain't even gonna get into though. You wait, and you won't have kids. There is a clock. There is a clock biologically for women. Men do
And
that all
men.
the time in the world.
Mm,
Well,
good quality, but
they could
mhm.
have kids at any time, is what I mean. But you truly do want to have kids. Once again, I'm not saying go and marry the first man you meet, which is be another problem too. A lot of times women didn't do nothing for years, and then now you realize, oh shoots, there's a clock. I turned in this age or whatever, and then the first
Mhm.
man you meet, you're gonna get married. And a lot of times you see some women, why she marry me. You ever see that? Or why he that with he? Why you pick up? Because no, you know why? You just pick up what was around. You just pick it up. When you could have been learning yourself, going out there, experiencing things or whatever, and then be like, no, you're waiting on the Lord. God got you. God do have us. He do
Mm-hmm.
have us, right? But you have to have some wisdom. I'm praying of God. Is this guy right for me? Is this guy every? What other step I should do? You understand? That's just life.
Mm-hmm.
And also do your own research. Like there's so many books that talk about Christian dating. Have you, if you are looking for a husband and you're in the church and you have never read a book on Christian dating or marriage, what are you doing? Even reading a book is not sin. So you could at least read a book. You could
Mm-hmm.
at least read a book. You could at least learn about different things. You understand? Some
Mm-hmm.
people out here wanting these things and then doing nothing, not even doing some research,
Mm-hmm.
not even trying to figure out like what next I supposed to do or something like that. So at least do
Mm-hmm.
your research on Christian dating. There are a lot of good books on Christian dating. You could do some research on singleness and Christian. Like the internet get every single thing. You understand? You can't just be like, oh, I in the church. God gonna send me somebody, and it's it. That's I'm
Mm-hmm.
sorry. I wish you the best of luck. I have all the faith in the world. I'm not saying that you don't have the faith or whatever. You understand? I prayed for a husband myself. I'm not gonna lie. I did too, but I was actively out there. I was telling people my type. How I met my
Mm-hmm.
husband, I had a type, and I was like, "This is me type, me type." I know I want, I know I this, and this. Like, and so
Mm-hmm.
you know what? How I met my husband, somebody was like, "This guy seemed like your type," and I was like, "Bet," and that was it. You not
Mm-hmm.
even your friend don't even know what you like.
Mm-hmm. And I was
Your friend
gonna
don't
say
even know what
that.
you like.
I was gonna
Mm-hmm.
say that some people are not, with their desires for marriage, are not even honest with themselves to be like, I desire marriage, And one, you have to
True.
admit that to yourself. Like you want to be
True.
married, you have to admit it. And then once you admit it, then you have to ask yourself, what can you do to help you know, to propel you towards your destination or your goal. And not to
Yeah.
say that women, we know that, men are the hunters and seekers, but you still need to position yourself,
Yeah.
you still need to
I think it should
position
be some
yourself
hunters too.
and
I know
and
business. I know.
and be preparation. We're going according to the Bible. The scripture says, man, he will find a wife, find a good thing. My point is, but you telling somebody like you mentioned that this is what I like, this is what I like, you letting people know. I don't see anything is wrong with that. You're
True.
letting people know because again, that helps, and you have to, and when you admit to yourself this is what you desire, right? You have to now ask yourself, this is what I desire. If you were that man or that woman, do I have what they would want? And if you don't, those are things you need to start working on. You want a you
Yes.
want a woman with a Coca-Cola bottle shape and you got a bare belly, maybe you need to start hitting the gym and vice versa with a woman. You want a man who's rich and you what does a rich man desire in a wife? Like you need to learn those things,
Yeah.
Proverbs 31 woman. We always talk about Proverbs 31 woman and all those things. Go read that. Like really read it. That woman was
Yeah.
not just vibing. She was
No.
doing stuff. And she was doing actual work. And that's what we're trying to say. That it takes intentionality. It takes a lot of intentionality to get to your desired goal. And not to say that there's a guarantee. Like clearly,
No.
you can do all the things and still it's not your time. Timing is everything, and you can
Yes.
trust on God for the timing. But you got to be prepared. You got to make yourself
Prepare yourself.
available. You got to be doing the work in the meantime because
Yeah.
you can't just don't have no, it's like you don't do that for a career. You want to become
Per-
a whatever profession. You
Perfect.
say you want to
Exactly.
be a teacher, a doctor, a lawyer, whatever. You go to school, you make plans, you network, you do all the things you need to do to get to it. It's the same principle.
It is.
You have to
It
do the
is.
work. You have to do the work to get to the destination. And it's not even the destination where that's the end. That's just the beginning because now the
Yes.
real work begins because and it's ongoing because you're dealing with
Yep.
two people who are different experiences and all that stuff. So it's going to be an ongoing process. But you have to be doing the work, because at the end of the day, mm, faith without work is dead. And dating without direction, support, or healing can be exhausting. Okay? So it's time to rethink the old playbook and write a new chapter because this one ain't working. It's not working. We need faith. We need effort. We need to walk hand in hand toward meaningful connection. And I feel like that's where we are as a woman who's single and desires marriage. I ain't got time for nonsense. I don't have the time for the nonsense. I'm in my 30s. I ain't got time for nonsense. So, when I'm speaking to someone, the intentionality is important to me. If there's no intentionality,
Yeah,
don't waste
facts.
my time. Don't waste my time. And I feel like a lot of people are burned out from dating, from
That's true.
just talking to people. Even though online dating is helpful, it's also there's also a dark side to it where you get burned out. The all you
That's not the
doing
only dark side.
true, true, but it's exhausting. So this whole thing, how it working out, is exhausting. I feel like and I can attest to this. People want meaningful connection.
Yeah.
Meaningful connection is so vital because that's what keeps us going. And dating is collecting information, like Shaka said. It's learning yourself. You thought you like this, then you encountered it, then you realize, never mind, that's not for me. And that's okay. Like, you learn from yourself.
Yeah.
It's not a way for you to, it's not marriage, people. It's not marriage, it's dating.
Good. Is that
You
the
can back
final
out at any
commitment?
time. Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
but,
Exactly. Instead of
but
going out on
stop
the tent and get
approaching.
married to somebody, exactly. But I got a question for you, Ken, because you was like,
Mhm.
the Bible says the man whoever find a wife. You trying to tell me that the woman can't do the finding? This scriptural, this spiritual, this
So
of the
the Bible said
church?
he will find a wife and a good thing. But you
Good.
remember when Naomi had Ruth go lay on Boaz on his feet?
She went to find. No, I'm glad she did. I waited for the Boaz to anyway. No, it's true. When you're talking, no, right? Ruth
hmm
did. Yeah, exactly. Because I'm thinking, I was like, I don't believe in that, y'all. I believe in finding whatever you're looking for. You go
Shoot your
find it.
shot.
I waited. I'd be like, you like waiting for somebody. Mm-mm.
Yeah.
I shoot it.
I
I
I'm
shot.
okay with
I shot my shot.
I'm okay with shooting your shot
What is?
initially, but I feel like after that the man still needs to be intentional in pursuing. Because to me, if it's
I
one sided,
agree.
where it's like you're always the pursuer,
No, this like a
mm-mm.
stalker. This not shooting your shot. This different. This is not shooting your shot.
Yeah,
You can't be shooting your shot and then nothing in return. That's not shooting your shot. It's a shot. You shoot it and then things happen.
he collect and he like, hey, I see you,
and then
I
and
see you
then he
there.
continue. But
Yeah.
yeah, no. Yeah, I agree.
Well, yeah.
Okay.
So let us know what you think. What has been your experience with the church when it comes to dating? Because different people probably had different luck. So you might be the one who was highly favored. You got married, you
Yes.
got the kids, everyone was happy for you. And who knows, happy for you. That, it was like a simple 1, 2, 3 step for you. But for some of us, it's literally all kind of
Of
zigzag
the
moves.
of the clip.
Off the cliff, on the cliff. Like, some of us give up, come back in, all kind of things. So let us know what has been your experience with dating when it comes to the church, and what advice do you have for singles who are, Christians and, want to date the right way and, honor God in their singleness. So let us know what you think. And if you've been listening so far, make sure to give us a thumbs up, leave a comment, like we mentioned, share it with someone. Also, follow us on all of our social media platforms. We are on TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram. Because check us out on there. We have different content. And if you for some reason you want to listen to us while you're working or doing some chores around the house, you can do so because we're available on most major streaming platforms like Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, iHeartRadio, etc. So you have options. You have so many options. So we appreciate you. We thank you for tuning in for another episode of the Lyman and Healing Podcast. Until we meet again, remember to bust a lime.
Bust a lime.
See you
See
next
you next
time.
time.